Alright, back with another question from Chapter 1. Give it some thought. Here, the prompt, hydrogen, oxygen, and water are all composed of molecules. What is it about a molecule of water that makes it a compound, whereas hydrogen and oxygen are elements? And so the textbook's response to this question, water is composed of two types of atoms, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen is composed of only hydrogen atoms, and oxygen is composed only of oxygen atoms. Therefore, hydrogen and oxygen are elements, and water is a compound. So, some nice, concise, textual explanation. If we translate this into pictures, let's create ourselves a key. We'll say that the red atoms are going to be oxygen. That's the formality. We'll say that the white spheres or atoms will represent hydrogen. And we can combine these in such a way to make different molecules. So this is a nice discussion of the somewhat subtle distinction between, again, elements, molecules, compounds, but in this case, they're more focusing on the distinction between elements versus compounds. You can have molecules of elements, or you can have molecules of compounds. The word molecule doesn't necessarily mean element or compound, but element and compound do mean very different things. So, with oxygen, elemental oxygen exists, the word is diatomically as O2. And so, in terms of just a simple ball representation, a 2D visual, if we want a molecule of O2, we have two of the oxygens. Envision that there's a chemical bond connecting those two species so that we have one. This here is one molecule of oxygen, so this is a molecule of oxygen which contains two atoms of oxygen, and that is also elemental oxygen. So there's several ways you could verbally describe. We can do a similar representation for hydrogen, which also exists. Its elemental state is diatomic. So we would have two hydrogen atoms joined together via a chemical bond, something like that. And again, we've thus formed one molecule of the element hydrogen. And now when we get into the distinction of a compound is something that is two or more different elements bonded together. And a nice example with which we are all familiar is water. And if we want to maintain our color coordinating, we could even write it as so. So we have a central oxygen. Later on we'll discuss how to write these molecular representations, but for now suffice it to say we're focused on our terminology. So we have the central oxygen atom, to which is bonded two hydrogen atoms. So we have now here, this is also could be called, it's a molecule of water. But water is not an element. Water is a compound made up of two elements, those two elements being hydrogen and oxygen.